This is exactly who to stash on your bench to guarantee yourself success later down the line of the fantasy football season. And even in this week coming up now, that isn't the basic guys everybody already has rostered you can't get on your team. If you do appreciate that, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We're reaching so many new people. It would help me out a ton. And I want to make sure you guys can be as knowledgeable as possible yourselves to win fantasy football. But make sure to stick around to the end of the video because I will give you a quick list of defenses that have really good matchups in week 11, 12, and possibly even 13. You need to be stashing to stay 1 week ahead of the waiver wire because we know it can get pretty insane. But the number one stash of this week is easily going to be Audric Estime, and I'll go through this pretty quickly because I'm sure a lot of people are already talking about him, but he's still barely rostered. Javonte essentially got benched last week. He had 1 carry compared to Estime at 14. Estime also ran 8 routes out of the backfield compared to Javonte at 10 and dominated the early down snaps, the short yardage snaps, and the red zone snaps, getting 2 out of the 3 in that category. He's averaging 5 yards per carry on the season as well. Like, these are all really, really good numbers. Now, we do have to understand that the Sean Payton offense is off the walls. 1 week it'll be Estime, 1 week it'll be Javonte Williams. It's pretty ignorant to just assume that Javonte is going to be benched for the rest of the season and not get usage. So that makes it a little bit harder to predict on a week-to-week basis, but that's exactly why we're stashing him, because anybody could be this RB1 in this offense. And we do know that as long as Sean Payton is a coach, he's going to lead his backfield to be top 5 in receptions. It's just what he's done since he's been in the league, essentially. So that's going to give a great upside in the PPR leagues for all of these running backs. But the Broncos especially, their offense is pretty decent. Like, all things considered, from what we expected in the beginning of the year, they should have a winning record. They were a second away from beating the undefeated Chiefs that have a really, really good defense. So there's a chance that he gets to be the RB1. And if he does, we're going to want to be stashing him before everybody else sees that and he's off the waiver wire. But another running back that we cannot forget about is Khalil Herbert. We still need to be stashing this guy. Everybody was raving about him once he got traded to the Bengals for a 7th round pick. Then he comes out last week, only plays 2% of the snaps. We all forget about it and just drop him if you have him. I still think he deserves to be in your roster. It was his first game. We have to be realistic. If we look at other guys like Deontay Johnson, like DeAndre Hopkins, even Amari Cooper, all of these guys that get traded to new teams take about 2 weeks, maybe even 3 or more than that, to get acclimated to the offense, the playbook, the coaching, and just get a full snap count. We can't be surprised when a running back in the first week of the team only plays 2% of the snaps, especially with how good Chase Brown has played. Not that many things are guaranteed in football, fantasy football especially, but his snap share increasing is one of those things that I will put my house on. Zach Taylor has said before that he doesn't want to run Chase Brown to the ground as a workhorse running back. It's just not a philosophy that he really believes in. There's a reason that Zach Moss and Chase Brown were both splitting time when Zach Moss was healthy, but now obviously he's on IR, and there's really no other running back that get usage because Chris Evans is also on IR. Travion Williams is the only other running back active in this roster that they have, and he's a rookie that's barely played any snaps. There's a reason that they got Herbert on this team. So will this backfield be 50-50 split? Absolutely not, at least not soon. Chase Brown is an amazing running back, and he has been getting used in every single facet of the offense, the red zones, the receiving role out of the backfield. But I do expect at some point in the season, it'll get closer to an 80-20, a 70-30, something that can lead to upside. And we could see that 30% of snaps could be the red zone role. It could be some receptions at the backfield. We really don't know. But what we do know is that if Chase Brown were to get injured, he would be a handcuff league-winning running back. Guys like Ray Davis, guys like Tyler Algier, Braylon Allen. We know if those number 1 running backs in the offense gets injured, they will be viable in fantasy football. And if we look at Herbert himself, yes, he's coming to a good team, but he was 15th in total PFF grade his rookie year out of all running backs, 35th the year after that, and then last year he was 14th in total PFF grade. So he's a very efficient running back, and if we isolate last year's stats only from the Bears, he was 12th in explosive run rate and 9th in missed tackles forced per attempt, and he was averaging 15 fantasy points per game in games where he saw over 11 carries. So he by no means is just a fill-in running back that isn't that good and doesn't deserve carries. And when you look at the Bengals, they have a really good offense. They're on the field a ton. They're scoring. They're getting yardage, which is really good for fantasy football and running backs in general, but their defense is really bad. So they're going to have to keep scoring, have to get their offense on the field if the defense is letting up 30 points a game. We've been seeing that over the past few weeks. But another guy here that we need to be stashing is A.D. Mitchell, and this one is a little bit more speculative. If we look at the statistics from week 10, in the week that he just finished, he had 6 targets for 71 receiving yards and 13 fantasy points without a touchdown, which is pretty good considering that fact. But the more important numbers is that he had a season high, career high at that, 94% of the snaps, 37 routes run. That was second on the team. So we look at Mitchell. There are 2 very big changes that makes him a good target for the rest of the season. Number 1 being Joe Flacco starting. With Anthony Richardson in this offense, they were bottom 1, the lowest team in passing volume. With Joe Flacco, that moves to top 10, almost top 5. So the passing volume is 100% going to be there. Is it going to be super efficient? No, we've seen that through the past few weeks, but the volume is going to be there, and that's really all that you need. The second is that Michael Pittman has been dealing with injury for a few weeks now. He's been playing through a back injury, picked up a finger injury, something minor, but he honestly could be landing on IR with it because he has clearly not been himself. He's clearly been injured, and that could starting to be catching up with him. And if that does, that moves A.D. Mitchell and Alec Pierce to the wide receiver 2 and 3 spot behind Josh Downs. And if you look at this team, they're starting Joe Flacco over Anthony Richardson. The team is 4-6. There's no reason that they should realistically be rushing Michael Pittman back into this offense, especially if it's a major injury that he's been playing through, which leads to the narrative that there is a potential season-long upside with A.D. Mitchell, considering his role in this offense. He's younger than Alec Pierce. In my opinion, he has more upside and potential than he does, so I would be stashing him over Alec Pierce. I talked about this a little bit earlier in the waiver wire trap video I posted earlier this week. Go check that out. If you haven't seen it, I will pin it in this video. But the fact that he excelled in his first game necessarily starting of the year against a very, very tough Bills defense. He does get a tough matchup against the Jets this week, but he gets a good one against the Lions and the Patriots and their bye week in week 14. So there is an opportunity for him to be startable in the coming weeks, even soon. But looking at another guy that we need to be stashing at tight end here is Theo Johnson from the New York Giants. Now, you probably haven't heard this guy. He's been under the radar for the reason that he is on the New York Giants, and this team just is not good. They're dealing with a bunch of issues. The reality is Daniel Jones can't throw downfield, even if he wanted to. After losing their best offensive lineman in Andrew Thomas to IR, he's not going to be back for the rest of the season. The average depth of target for Daniel Jones has drastically decreased, which is why we've seen Malik Neighbors be less efficient in fantasy football over the past few weeks, and he's necessarily been struggling in his aspect. But this is going to lead to the Giants having to keep everything in front of them and close to the line of scrimmage, which is good for guys like Theo Johnson that play very close, and slot guys like Wando Robinson who don't run really deep routes like Malik Neighbors does. So this is a rookie tight end. They came out of the jump from the draft seeing 80% of the snaps or more, and that has never changed since week 1 of the season. Like, most tight ends don't even see that, let alone rookie tight ends. As far as route participation goes, that is there too. He saw 6 targets in back-to-back weeks, and if you isolate his week 10 numbers against the Panthers from last week, he saw a 19% team target share, which is very, very good for the tight end position, and he has a 90% plus snap percentage since week 6. We've seen how the Giants get their tight ends used previously with guys like Darren Waller, with guys like Evan Ingram before he was traded, so this position is important to the offense, and even if we do get a quarterback change from Daniel Jones, which is very possible, it's still going to be a positive spot for Theo Johnson because rookie quarterbacks, backup quarterbacks, whoever it ends up being that fills in, usually doesn't come out and start slinging the ball 40 yards downfield. They keep everything close. So again, that's going to be good for the tight ends, and they might run even more 2 tight end sets, keep a heavy personnel to help block and also to just alleviate some of the defensive pressure. But another tight end, if you don't want to go get him, and one of the more sneaky ads is going to be Dawson Knox. We saw last week that Kincaid left early with a knee injury, came back into the game, took himself back out. He clearly is not healthy, which means Dawson Knox could be the tight end 1 for a very high-powered offense if Dalton Kincaid were to miss more time than expected. Now, in previous years, we've seen that Dawson Knox can 100% produce. He just hasn't had the opportunity to since they drafted Kincaid 2 years ago. But the offense, again, is efficient. They're top 10 in passing yards. They're top 10 in passing efficiency and touchdowns. So, again, if for some reason Dawson Knox is the tight end 1 and Kincaid is out for the rest of the year or out for just 1 week, he's going to be a decent fill-in guy. So keep an eye on him, monitor that injury, and if he is playing, then we don't need to be adding Dawson Knox. But I do want to give you guys as much information as possible to make the best decisions for yourself. So hit that like button if you do appreciate that. But it's time to grab your backup running backs as well. We are about a month away from the fantasy football playoffs, so now is the time to do that. You don't want to get your season ruined by injuries, but you only want to be grabbing your handcuffs if they're actually really, really valuable. Again, if you have a guy like Rico Dowdle, you don't really need to be grabbing Zeke off the waiver wire because if Rico Dowdle does get injured, Zeke's probably not going to be startable anyways. But number 1 here is going to be Cam Akers. He got 16 snaps compared to Ty Chandler at 0, who was a healthy scratch despite being fully healthy in relief time from last week. He's a good option. Braylon Allen is another guy that's proven to be very, very good in the snaps that he is taking, and he's even seeing snaps alongside Breece Hall. He's not even a handcuff at that point, so he's a good option. Ray Davis is another one, extremely efficient handcuff running back. He's done nothing but that in his time that he has played. We saw a week where he filled in for James Cook, and he was really good in that sense. Tyler Algier, obviously another guy on here. Bijan has had 5 straight games with over 100 yards. Algier is still getting his touches despite all of that success he's seeing, and he's had a 1,000-yard season in his rookie year, so we know exactly what he can do. Gus Edwards also classifies for this list himself. Kamani Vidal was a healthy scratch last week, the first week that Gus Edwards comes off of IR, so he's going to be a guy to stash. Blake Corum is on here as well. The Rams don't really have any other running backs in this active roster capable of touches outside of him. If Kyron Williams, for some reason, gets injured, he's going to be a league winner. And also, Tajay Spears, because of his involvement in the pass game besides Tony Pollard. Even if this offense isn't amazing, the receiving upside is going to get him there. But now for some defenses that we can go through and stash that have amazing schedules in the next 2 or 3 weeks. The Dolphins is going to be number 1. They get a great matchup against the Raiders in week 11. We know that they're not necessarily good. They're coming off their bye week. And then the Patriots in week 12. They just held the Rams to 15 points on Monday Night Football. They're a very good defense in stopping the pass. They're a little bit worse in stopping the run game, but as far as the Raiders go, they don't have a run game, and everything they do is in the pass, so the weaknesses match up really good for that defense. The Texans is another one that I will be stashing. Their rest of season schedule is also very positive, not just outside the next 3 games. They get the Cowboys in week 11 with Cooper Rush, who just threw for 45 yards. That is not going to be good. It's not going to get it done. And let's say they put Trey Lance in this offense. That's even worse because he's a turnover merchant. He is number 1 in the NFL in turnovers per pass attempt. That should tell you all you need to know. Followed by the Titans the week after that. Will Levis is averaging 1.8 interceptions a game. That is also very, very bad. And then they get the Jaguars, who may have to play with Mac Jones again. They have a bye week in week 14 and then the Dolphins again in week 15. But that's going to finish off this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you in the trade target video coming tomorrow.